Do I have a... I hope I have a card in there. I think I have a card in there. Yeah, it's recording. This is Kal Kat, the Kal Katster, and this is a review of the season finale of Star Trek Lower Decks. It'll have spoilers. Season finale is called No Small Parts. No Small Parts. Season finale has the crew in a previous ship, Sarlanga or something. It encounters this weird race of sort of gatherer aliens. They're not the gatherers though. They're hoarder aliens that are like packed. Yeah, from TNG. They're not the gatherers though. But they've stolen technology and they're using it to destroy things. The opening scene is them in the preview going to the planet of the Landru from classic Trek, where they're devolved a little bit and want to worship the computer again, which was funny. And the computer was like talking in the background. It was like, oh, okay, I won't be bad. Oh. And their technology was regressed to the steampunk era, sort of a nod to steampunk, but also probably a nod to Bioshock Infinite, which is funny. Okay, sure. Also, they accidentally, inadvertently reveal that the captain is the mother of this main character, Mariner. God. So Mariner and the captain, he reveals that they're related, that they're mother and daughter. However, they kind of already said that in like episode 2, but they forgot. The crew wasn't listening or something. It was pretty obvious from the get-go. As I said, in the silly Trek version of these characters, it's somebody else. But in this version, and it could also be, in a sense, the tale tellers and the talismans as well, all of which were white people. But that's all right, because let's be diverse. Let's make them black. That's cool, but it's not the same characters then. I guess they had to change it because they figured, well, we want to be exactly like Starship Locations, but we're black people. It's just they weren't the captain of that particular ship. There was a Lonnie Calhoun. Not very many though, actually. We had Visor is LaForge. Visor is basically the bionic guy. We had basically LaForge. We had Worf, who was called Worst. We have a few. We have Uhura, called Savvy. So we have a bunch of other people that are like that, but they switched things up a little bit and made it mother and daughter like going at each other. Probably more like the tale tellers though than the Klenas. The tale tellers were more like that. This would be Drea causing trouble, or Reyna in the story causing trouble, and Kathy going, "No, you can't do that." It'd be more like that. With those two, even though I don't think she technically would, but oh well. Anyway, but the Tendi is clearly, and the Borg guy are clearly from Michael Gamelt's game story, Uncharted. And then we got, not the Uncharted, but Star Trek Uncharted Beyond the thing. I don't think he gave them permission. I think they're just borrowing from Starship Locations, where we also covered the same material. So, yeah, we were spoofing it and joking about it. That's the theory. Now we get to the end of the story, and we get to the story, and we get to a story that's their story. These mysterious aliens turn out to be the Packlets, and they are apparently like super powered because they think everything's the Enterprise, which is funny. But they have superpowers. They hint at the Titan again. Yes, this will contain spoilers. We didn't want to give it away, but yeah, this is it's a Kelly episode, but not a silly Kelly episode. Kelly directed it. A Kelly directed it. But yes, Yeah, we weren't involved, but somehow, in some mysterious way, through the shapings of the world, Star Trek, they're somehow involved. I don't know how that happened, but yeah, McMahon did not go to school with us, but his people have been studying Starship Locations apparently for years, because yeah, but yeah, so we have the Packlids destroy the other ship, and then they have to go and rescue it from near the. I'm assuming it's a dwarf star, but it just looks like a red giant. It's like a big, like a maybe they reference Wolf 359. Somebody references that as an inside job. There was a joke in there about that. There was a joke about the bearded guy who's basically Cal Halter, who is running around. But actually he's not, it turns out. He's not Cal Halter. He's actually the burly Hollybrook from the Starship Locations again. He's Hollybrook. He's not me. He's Hollybrook. Yeah. No, yeah. And the bald guy is supposed, the balding guy is supposed to be Clark or Clerk, but they've messed that, or Lelantos, but they've messed that up, and they've basically said, okay, it's not Clerk or Lelantos or Clark, it's basically their version of the bald guy, the Picard sort of thing. Yeah, I know we have the angry Bajoran guy who's basically it's Buffkin. It's Buffett him. It's the same name. It's also who was the Klinzai in Starship Locations, but apparently they've decided to off his character in this episode, but yes, heroically, which also happened in Starship Locations to Klingbuff. This is very similar to an old episode of Silly Trek for the 30th anniversary called The Ineptitude, in which the ship was basically the Cerritos. This is in 1996, and this role-playing game episode was way back in 96, and the same events happened, and they blew up a ship. They had to repair it. But yeah, they would have had to go deep into. Well, they wouldn't have had to go too far because that episode was retold as sort of a holodeck / space adventure / alien attack thing in Starship Locations Cillian Realms. So they've really looked into Cillian Realms a lot in this. They might as well just hire us, Mark's Cards in it, because they might as well just do it because they're making Silly Trek. And not only that, we have the Titan, the 2380s Titan, the one from, again, Chimera. That ship was designed by someone else, though, for the books. And in games, it wasn't us. That's why the Titan in 2388 in Chimera, 8 years later, is a different ship. It's the Titan A. But we get to see the Titan. We get to see Riker. And, yeah, and several of the key events change, and Weimler gets a promotion. So there's all of this onto the Titan. So will we see episodes on the Titan now? Will Jonathan Frakes show up in more episodes, or will they just sort of... Actually, his appearance in this one was better than the appearance in the season finale of Picard, because he actually got to be Riker on his ship and stuff. They actually did that well. And Troy analyzed the insecurities of the buffed dude, who is a cross between Hollybrook and Kabufkin, and the other guy's Buffkin. See, they got it confused because they were like Klingbuff and Kabufkin. They kind of seem similar. Well, that's because they're the same guy. They're like an alternate universe. But in this one, they're not. One of them's like the Klingon version of the guy. He's like, if you put on cosplay and I'm a Klingon. And it's the same guy. Or he could be... So that would make the security guy Big Tim, then, basically. Tim Cantrell or Connors. In the Silly Trek version, Connors. But they wouldn't kill Tim's character. Oh, no. But yeah, he's Tim. So, yeah, it's kind of confusing as to... They mixed him up because they didn't want to make any waves, so they mixed him up. Anyway, so we have... none of that Cillian stuff matters all that much because they did their own thing. That's fine, but that's where they got it. Absolutely. But yeah, so yeah, Star Trek Lower Decks. They get it next season. They'll just say based on a premise by Kal Kat and Mark's Gardens. Yeah. So, yeah, it was an episode about the Packlids trying to get the ship. That was the episode about the mother being revealed as the mother and daughter thing and the nepotism thing. That's a prevalent theme in the Chimera thing, actually. Starship Chimera especially, which was set in 2381 and 8283. Yeah, at the same time period. So they really like Starship Chimera over there. The movie version is set in 2388. So yeah, that's set a little later, after the events of Lower Decks. Presumably by that time, the Lower Decks cast was indoctrinated into Starfleet better and is served throughout the galaxy. Presumably. Yes. Yeah. Sure. Yeah, we blew up the Titan at some point and got another one. Yeah. Not in this one though, in the Silly Track one. But yeah, this is going to be a confusing video because I keep going back to locations, but it's so similar to Cillian Realms and Starship Locations. They had to have read it. They absolutely had to have read it. And a lot of it. Well, they should keep reading it. They should get it on Amazon and keep reading it. 'Cause, yeah. Okay, the finale did not feature a giant teddy bear, but it kind of did. The Packlid dudes were dressed up like these weird alien things. Kind of looked a little like a space teddy bear. Then they took their helmets off. So they're basically the Teddy Ruxpin guy at the end of the story. Oh no, and the Titan comes in to save them. Of course it does. In a scene very reminiscent of the scene in Star Trek Chimera with the other Titan. Very similar. And the dialogue, very similar. And the costumes, very similar. Yeah. But unlike the Tardigrades guy, oh, I took my game. Oh, I was like, I don't mind that they took the game because they've been borrowing from us for 35 years. Why not? Let them do it again. That's cool. So yeah, and other fans as well. I'm sure there's other stories that I don't recognize. The Exocomp thing is from an episode of TNG. That was funny. They use a computer virus to destroy the Packlet ship in the same way that they've done in other episodes, but messes up Rudder the Third and messes up his eye thing. Even though they go into the thing and they do that, they rip out his bionic, and then he can't remember anything at the end. They do the I can't remember anything reboot at the end. So you could be your friend all over again, and friends with Tindy all over again. It's like, yeah, they've done that in Chimera too. Yeah, so a lot of stuff going on in this one. And the bridge of the Titan looks like the Chimera. It shouldn't, but it does. So yeah, I like the Next Generation music fanfare in the back. Was that well originally in Star Trek Picard, and we know this because yeah, we were kind of involved in some of that. Yep, we were. So you gotta have Riker and the Titan at the end, because otherwise it's like you had Riker earlier. It's like, I didn't even think of that. Oh yeah, we gotta get Jonathan Frakes and put him on a bridge somewhere. They used the Discovery Bridge. They turned it around slightly. It was a Discovery Bridge. And they just put red alert stuff all over it. And kind of hid where the helm and navigation would be. Yeah, and then they filmed on it, and they did this like gag about you can kick your Romulan, Tal Shiar butt and all that. Right out of Star Trek Chimera, incidentally. But yes, without Romulans, so it was Klingons. Yeah, it was a Klingon guy in that one. But yeah, they had to change it because it wouldn't make sense. You know, they were about Romulans. Of course, we got to immediately do form parodies of Picard and Discovery last season, and put them into 2 storybooks that were released this year. The Fontana and Clerks adventure and the Strange New Worlds parody one about the Fallen Ones. The 2 stories that we put in there. So that was the latest 2 that we did this year, based on that. The Fontana and Clerks, Meet Clerks story is the Star Trek Picard parody. And the other one is is an Ancient Aliens parody, but it has elements of what would be Discovery this season that's coming up. Go ahead and read it though, because it doesn't have anything to do with the season. It's just that it takes place just before she shows up. So we had to like stay with. Don't have Discovery show up in the story. Just have the other crew looking for it, because you're gonna like mess up the canon. We don't want to do that. The glorious canon. So okay, we'll do it just before they'll be on this planet that'll do all these weird things to them, and then they'll get off the planet and the Fallen One planet. Yes, we did a Nephilim planet, a Nephilim planet, and so we had that going on. That was in production as the pandemic started, and so it had phoned that entire thing in. Yeah, so I wrote it, and yeah, so that was the latest Cillian story. So they're still going on, they're still around, and that was a couple months ago. Was that like April or May or something when it came out? Yeah, so and then yeah, a little later, July, I think was the later one, but yeah, that one's set in 3188, or that's just before the Discovery episode shows up. 3288, something like that. Yeah, 100. No, it was It makes sense in the story. Yeah, it's just before the Discovery shows up. So yeah, in that one, but you don't need to know about that here because it doesn't have anything to do with here. But yeah, these reviews have all been kind of an overview of how similar Lower Decks is to Chimera. It's been like that the whole time. So I just thought to mention it, even though it probably isn't legally even similar. One's a parody, the other isn't. and one's some fanfic, it isn't. But yeah, it's heavily influenced by the stuff we've done. Yeah, hopefully if next season they encounter a planet of fallen ones, then we'll be like, okay, well, they totally went there. That'd be kind of funny if it'd be hilarious if they encountered the parody versions thinking they were the real ones, like they did here with Mariner and her mother thinking it's Chris and her daughter, right? Obviously, or it's Kathy and her daughter, obviously, right? They were thinking of Kathy and Rhea, but sort of. Yeah. That's who they were thinking of. They were thinking a little bit of Talisman too. They were thinking more of Talisman, and that would be Angelica and Sandra as well, their daughter, or Angie and her daughters. I don't think I put the other Angie and her daughters in it though. The Blueson wasn't in it. This version, they're all blonde, oddly enough, with blue-eyed. Weird. Well, as Sandra's a brunette, but anyway. But yeah, it's weird how they crossed over some of this stuff. But it would be funny if they had like next season they're all, oh, this was Star Trek canon, right? This character of Captain Clark. Yeah, let's put him in there. Yeah, that would be great. Like, that's not from Star Trek. That's from mine. Or they put in Elton Indigo Sooner instead of Soon. Sooner shows up, and he's like, I'm Elton Sooner. I'm the android guy from the planet Nepotisma, because you referenced it in the story. It's like, that's also from Starship Locations. Yes, do that. The only thing they didn't do was have a love tryst between the burly commander guy and the burly security chief. Nope, they didn't do that. They did this. This has been relatively unscathed from that. They've clearly done the not gays thing with the muscle guy and the other guy. And said, "Oh, we're totally manly men." That's why it had to end. It didn't, but it had to go there. You know, they killed the guy off, but they didn't. But they established he was manly the whole time. So they actually killed one of their characters off. But yeah, if they introduced Clark and Thompson and Raxler from Starcrackers, that would be even more interesting. Be like, what? Raxler? Why don't I play him? I'll come back and play him. I'll do the voice. I am Raxler of the 3rd Zurich Garrison. I have a white cloth wrapped around my head. But it's like the great announcer Steve Carell from Transformers. Crowley from Transformers, who said that one time he went in for a voiceover interview thing, and there was a guy trying to imitate his voice to get a part in a cartoon series, and he was Corelli, and he was like, you know, the guy who said, "It is the year 2005. The treacherous Decepticons have conquered the Autobots' home planet of Cybertron." That guy. And he goes into the interview, and they'll tell him how to do a Corelli voice, and he says, "Well, I'm Corelli," and he's like, "Oh, they just get you." but yeah, but he's Corelli. But that guy said the story. Whereas in the reverse, Peter Cullen was not asked to be in the Netflix Transformer series. He wanted to be, and they wouldn't let him. And yeah, so he was like, "Wait a minute, you don't want me to be in that? What are you doing?" Oh. Of course, he does now sound like he's like quite old. All those guys are like in their 70s now, so their voices don't sound the same anymore. Even in Transformers, the movie, when he was 60-something, he didn't. The original, the sequel, Michael Bay one, didn't sound like the original one. Not as much. You know, he had a different timbre. To Optimus Prime. Frank Welker's still doing stuff. He was also in the Scooby-Doo remakes and all that. But yeah, that's funny. Little known animated series, Lower Decks. In an overview of the whole series, it is fun, even though it's silly and avant-garde, and it's not like the animated Star Trek, which was trying to be serious most of the time. It's more like Rick and Morty. It's less like a Rick and Morty, and it's actually subdued compared to Rick and Morty. That is a seriously crazy show. But yeah, it works on multiple levels. Other than its similarity to other fan films. It's not just mine. It's similar to other ones. It's similar to First Frontier. It's similar to Hidden Frontiers a little bit. It has elements of Horizon in it. There's a bunch of them that it's emulating. It seems to have a little bit of Excalibur, which wasn't completed in it as well, with the sort of banter on the stations that seems to be out of place for the Admiral to be bantering like that with his subordinate. That's in there. That would be. There is a short film of Excalibur, of which we were indirectly involved in behind the scenes, so that's not going to happen. So that would have been live. That would have been interesting if that had happened. That would have been. You would have been able to see me and Brian's story in a Star Trek film, acting in a Star Trek film, fan film. That would have been interesting. I don't know which character I was going to play. Probably the helmsman or something. He was going to be the ship's doctor. I was going to be like walking around with the ship. Didn't happen. It fell apart. A lot of fan film stuff does fall apart. And now that they've laxed on the rules a little bit, since clearly Lower Decks is its own thing, and even though it's got a Star Trek name, it's its own thing, and they've pulled up the rules a little bit, so they allowed the fan films to come out. And yet the Action Hour people are still complaining, and they're the ones that started the whole thing. But they could do their show now if they wanted to. They could do Action Hour. I don't know what they're complaining about. We've lifted the restrictions. So, yeah. You can do your fan films. Go ahead. Do them. oddly enough, and thanks to Kurtzman, who actually said, yeah, lift the restrictions a little bit, let the fan films come out. They're not going to be confused. Yeah, so it's Kurtzman and these other guys. Yeah, and then there's a scene in Picard, a cameo. That was fun. But yes, blow up the lady. Yeah, that was CG though. They blew her up. Yeah, nobody got blown up. It was CG. It's kind of weird. Walks off the set, just like nothing there. It's green screen. Yeah, there was actually. Yeah, that was strange. Star Trek Picard. And a Midnight's Edge is complaining, and Doomcock is complaining in Star Trek, Yeah, but they're letting them do their stuff. Ironically, the Doomcock guy started watching Discovery and like reviewing it. Apparently, he wasn't watching it before then. I mean, it is not, the first season is not great, but neither was the first season of TNG or Deep Space Nine or Voyager. They weren't that great in the first season. They didn't know what they were doing. So yeah, but yeah, the whole Star Trek legend is kind of a mess, and somehow interwoven into that, Starship Locations, one of the fan films. Somehow this thing is just out there. It's like, yes, I believe Continues got to finish, but not Phase 2. Phase 2 was going to do, like, the final episode. Continues finished. Phase 2 could finish. They could do their last episode if they want to, the one where they go to the Yanata planet. Yanata asteroid planet. They could do that episode. They probably won't. It's been like 6 years, but they can if they want to. They can finish it. It would be a little weird because I don't think they have the sets anymore. They'd have to go borrow the Star Trek Continues sets and use those, which would be unusual, but they could do that. And although part of what happened to Excalibur was many years ago, around 2006, somebody wrecked all of his sets that he built in the warehouse, so he had to rebuild them, and it took him a while to rebuild them, and when they finally rebuilt them, some of them, it was already 2012, and it just kind of never happened. So they did this one thing in the library down in Vegas somewhere, and that was it. So yeah, I'm not in that, but I would have been in the next one. Oh well. But yeah. But yeah, so yeah, fan film people are interesting. Also, the Star Wars, there were like figure projection things, and that's a different universe. But Star Wars, there was an awesome Star Wars Star Trek fan film out there too that just came out. I don't know if it just came out, but it posted. Yeah, about an R2-D2 unit, well, a red one that goes to visit the starship that looks like the Enterprise. It's kind of an odd idea. Okay, but it's short, so go check that out. Wasn't mine, somebody else. Yeah, it's kind of similar to this episode of Lower Decks, so it's related. Yeah. Lower Decks, I'll see you next season. Coming soon, Star Trek Discovery, Season 3. We're there in the distant future of 3188. Yes. I've not watched any of the Ready Room episodes. But they did get Jonathan Frakes and Marina Sirtis in this episode, and that was awesome. And they've had a Kal Kat character cameo in literally all 10 episodes. Somebody's popped in as a Kal Kat. They even showed what appeared to be the Klenna character getting killed on the other ship when she first encounters the Packlets. She gets blasted. So in this Cillian canon, she gets blasted by the Packlets. So they do actually establish that, no, this character, Mariner, is not actually Chris and Libby. Here's Chris. Here's her in command of a ship, and it gets destroyed. It was like, oh, okay. That was this nice episode. I was like, oh, go ahead, put her in there. Like, okay, yeah, you guys are reading Starship Locations. Because that was good. Okay, so yeah, anyway, so there we go. They just really love it. Well, buy more books. Buy more books. To quote Shatner from Robot Chicken, buy my book. Buy my book.